Hi everyone, I'm Gary Tucker and welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor. This week we continue our study of clouds with some very impressive formations known as cumulus nimbus, or as I like to call them, Cumulus Hippopotamus. We have such a variety of clouds to choose from. I thought it would be fun to focus on some really dramatic shapes that we see in the Colorado sky as they're coming off the foothills. Don't forget, there's a free PDF file below that describes some of the processes used in creating these clouds and gives you tips for your watercolor painting. So, without further ado, let's head over to the watercolor table and pick up our brushes. Start to create that underside. Getting a nice upward movement to this cloud. The colors I'm using are a cool gray, kind of pre-mixed. This is called Joseph's Cool Gray, made by Daniel Smith, but basically it's a shortcut. You can make this gray if you don't have it. This is Cobalt Blue. I'll be using some of that in the sky, and a little bit of cerulean blue for the lower part of the sky. I've got some lavender, I've got some red that I will use in the sky as well. Okay. Let's see here. Brush selection, always important, maybe more so today. I'm using a few brushes, a couple of mops, a couple of big sables, and a flat brush. The bigger brushes I'm going to use to kind of wet and do the first layers, and then work into it with smaller brushes. So the first thing I want to do is mix up some paint that I'm going to use. So let's mix our gray over here. Let's start with just mixing a big puddle of gray that we're going to use in the clouds. So there's some warm aspect. It's a pretty neutral gray, but generally, quite often, the underside of the cloud is warm because it's reflecting whatever's underneath it. That tends to be warm as well. It's not overtly so, it's very subtle. I'm adding here a bit of burnt sienna to the gray. I'm looking for consistency. Something like heavy cream. Pretty thick. I want to mix up a bit of that so that I don't have to mix it halfway through. Not overly dark. In fact, I might even put in a little bit of white as I mix this up. Okay, that should serve us. And the blue. Blue is going to be a little bit of a brighter color. I just put some water into this area. It's a little dirty, fine with me. Cobalt. A little bit of red. And we'll just leave a big puddle of that here too. So we've got a foundation for our colors. Of course, we might vary them. Certainly we're going to vary the blue as it comes lower, adding a little bit more cerulean So there's my foundation colors. And to get started, I'm going to, that yellow is not preferable. I like a warm color, but the yellow is a little strong. It's actually a green yellow, which we don't want in the white of the sky. So let's take that up. And then let's mix in some yellow ochre, even a little bit of light pink color. Then we can get by with that. Maybe some jaune brilliant. Yellow ochre. Raw sienna would work too. What I'm looking for here is a very bright, that means weak, warm hue. Lots of water. All right. And I'm just going to start with water. Just plain water, back and forth over the drawing. I'm going to go over the whole cloud and the whole background and, well, the whole sheet of paper. This flat brush is good for this purpose because it doesn't carry a lot of liquid to the paper. It carries a little bit of liquid. And we want there to be some drying on top. Not in specific places, just a little bit of drying. Good. And I'm going to take this mop brush and add a little of this warm hue, yellow ochre. Let's just start to create the cloud. You can tell how wet the paper is. We'll leave some whites. But this is such a light color that it's really not going to even register. But it gives us an awareness of that cloud shape and how it changes as it's coming down. We're just doing sky and clouds. We're not going to do the land in this piece. Now I take a small mop brush, a small sablette, and I'm going to pick up some of this gray that has been mixed and take out a little bit and just make a mark. You see how it travels. It's a little diluted, so I'm going to add a little more gray, a little bit of burnt sienna, some white, mix it all together there. And wet the page a little bit on the top. Just keep that workable. And I'm going to start to create some calligraphy here. Just sort of random. But calligraphy. Kind of following the placement of my strokes. Building it up. And then I'm going to switch to this little bigger brush here and start to create that underside. Getting a nice upward movement to this cloud. Let's keep it a little wet on top. More of this. This part is sort of inconsequential. Okay, then we move to the blue. And I have my mop brush here. A little spritz up above. Make sure it's wet through there. And now we shape the cloud from above. So we come here, we can follow the marks if we want, or make our own improvisation. Anyway, we're looking for that big billowing feel to it. Trying to provoke it a little bit. So I get some intermittent edges, lost and found edges. Sort of like that. Then we work the blue right into the gray underneath. And we get a little lighter, or we can add some lavender to that. Some cerulean as it comes down. So it gets a little paler. And we have a choice to really come against this gray or to leave a little white exposed. Either case is okay. This is what happens towards the horizon, is there's sort of a mixing of those. Now let's get just a little darker on the bottom of that cloud. I'm going to add some of this blue and a little bit of the leftovers here, and come once more. The cloud is very wet, so it's going to move downward. Almost as a rain cloud would. It needs to be a little darker. We're experimenting, so have fun, Very narrow, skinny towards the horizon. I'm just going to close this off right here, so it feels like the whole underside is connected. That's the idea. What happens if we touch up here a little bit? We can add some little things, sort of insignificant, but I'm in an experimental state right now, so I'm very curious. If we run this cloud into the sky. Yes, so we get some texturing up above. And this is very much the sort of cloud we're going to paint today. You see, it's a very quick affair. and the preparation, how important that preparation is. We keep it nice and wet so that we can put these softer passages into the clouds. This dry brush doesn't blend as well as I'd hoped, but that's why I'm doing it in this practice, so that I get a little better idea of what to expect. Let's finish that off properly. That's an impressive cloud. Scary in a sense because you don't know what kind of weather it's bringing. But this is very common in the foothills or the front range of mountainous areas where the temperature is rising on the plain and cooling down from the mountains. So you get these really big, I wouldn't call it a thunderhead, but I would call it cumulus cloud. So this week we're doing much more with the underside, right, than we did last week. Last week was more of a pattern of clouds in the sky, provided a nice relief and a sort of background to our scene. Here the cloud is taking center stage and really creating a strong energy across the whole picture. And a couple important aspects. The underside of the cloud has a rise to it, and this rise is caused by warm air that's rising, but it's a very dynamic shape too. When we have this sort of dynamic quality in our clouds, or any shape for that matter, when we have this sort of oblique quality, it creates a nice energy, a nice strong energy, as opposed to just a flat cloud that's on the horizon. That you see certain times, but this is more kind of more dynamic feel to it. Some bright white that's catching the sun, the late day sun, and that pale graded wash behind, lost and found edges throughout, softness below. A lot going on in the creation of this cloud that gives us the sort of drama that we want in today's painting. Let's try another one. All right, another piece of paper on the board. We're going to basically repeat this exercise. That's just for that strong upward motion in the clouds, some nice growing energy to the cumulus. Smaller clouds also have a bit of texture, but as they come lower, they get skinnier and not as powerful as these first clouds. I really don't even need to draw so much, but I want to be reminded. Yeah, more happens when we start to apply the brush. Okay. All the way down. This will be our ground level. And the first thing we do is we wet the whole paper. Just using dirty water, not even changing the water from my previous exercise. Using Arches 140 rough paper, but any good professional paper will give you similar results. I like the rough texture just for that reason. It gives some of my brushwork a little extra. Just bring it down to the land area right here. And I'll spray it a bit. So it's good to have these tools at hand, the spray bottle, so you can see how wet the paper is, the brushes you need, colors you need, etc. And I want to bring my favorite brush into play, and a smaller version of that favorite brush. Where is it? This guy. Yeah, this one. So a couple mop brushes that are quite well worn. And let's mix up the color. We should have done this before even wetting the page. So first mistake. We can repeat that wetting part if we want. So let's mix up the color here. A nice deep warm gray for the underside of the cloud. Putting a little burnt sienna and a little bit of yellow ochre into this gray. A little bit of white as well. The white kind of helps it from spreading out too much. Of course, the thickness of the paint goes a long way to doing that as well. So it's really a sort of a feel-based. How does it feel? I'm trying to get a thick quality to the paint, as you can see, and a warm quality to that gray. The yellow ochre looks good in that gray, so I'm going to add a bit more. And then the brush still has paint. I'm going to use that brush when I create the underside of the cloud. I'm going to build up the blue now using cerulean and a little cobalt and a little red. Red is the cad orange red. Yeah, nice thick stuff. And just build up a little more than you think you'll need. A little bit of white as well. Some water. Intensify the blue a little bit. There we go. I could use, instead of white, I could use lavender for the same effect. It just keeps it bluer. All right, we've got a lot of sky. We've got a lot of the underside color. We're ready to go. So let's do that first part again, since our page is basically dried. Well, that's a good example of how fickle, how fragile this media is of watercolor. We have to be aware of these things constantly. Let's see if doing it this way, where we actually wet the paper twice, works against us or for us. If it works for us, we've learned something important. Something we can use next time. Works against us, we know what to avoid. Okay, so there's our wet page, pretty wet. I'm going to start with some of the gray. Actually, let's put a bit of warm color very loosely to start to create the clouds. Here's that warm color. Let's just put a little bit. Some warm hue up here. So we can not only start to give some feeling of sunshine striking the cloud, but we can start to see the cloud on our page. We've added more water, so we have to take that into account. So let's use our smaller brush here and start to build in. Let's make a test of some of our grays. Let's see, let's do a little work over here. Make a couple of dots and see how they move. They do spread out a little bit, which is fine. Let's create a little calligraphy here. I'm going to borrow some of this blue. Watching how it moves because we have added a little more water, haven't we? All the way up. Putting a little more shadow on the right side of the cloud this time. And let's put now some stronger mix through here. I'm going to add a little bit of our blue to it as well. And start to shape this part of the cloud. Just some dots and dashes, a little flourish. I like how that's spreading below. I really push down on the brush for that. Here I'm going to drag it across and get a little more control. Let's put in more blue. I'm putting in some of the sky blue here, just to get a variety of grays. Then we start to create the smaller, narrow clouds along the horizon. All right, this is good enough for now. I'm taking a little bit more of that blue and putting it through here, pressing down the brush. Press down and it releases a lot more liquid. Still, it's not really running down the paper. So let's blend it with the bottle, just a couple of touches. Now we need to work up above. I'm going to hit the top corner, the left corner, a little bit through here. I'm going to start to shape this blue now. Cobalt blue, cerulean blue, a little bit of red. And some water. Let's see how that looks. Not bad, but a little more bright blue. There we go. Okay. Kind of like the feel of this. We'll come right up against that gray this time. Don't press too hard. Good. And then as it moves to the left, I'm going to lighten it a bit too, as though the light is really being generated from the left part of the sky. So I'm adding just a little bit of water, and that I can use this water here and making it a little bit paler of a blue. Not significantly, but a little bit. Okay, let's shape this. Now the top part is wet, so let's take the opportunity to blend them a little better. Take your time to shape the edges. Get them like you want them. That looks pretty good. Good enough anyway. We start to do that on the area below as well. Let's mix up just a little bit more. Well, we're going lighter now, so let's add a little cerulean, a little white, a little bit of water. Something like that, and I'm going to come right up against this cloud. And a little more. Painting the blue right into the gray, and the blue does have a little bit of a reaction. You know, kind of moves out the gray so that we see a little bit purer version of the sky. Oh, that's good enough. Anything left to do? You know, I like it a lot. I'm gonna leave it. Let's get this. And I like what this little transition across the top does. Really makes the light feel stronger from the left-hand side, lighter below, so we feel like shape to the sky. The horizon looks good. Some nice edges on top, right? Some nice bounding edges, tall, rolling edges. Some are soft, some are very hard. Good combination. And when we press on the brush, you see how it releases a little more color to come down. All right, good work. Couple of cloud studies. I think we're ready to do our painting.